Now, when the bells of independence chimed across Nigeria in 1960, there was great hope that this newly achieved self-rule would lead to systemic equality, fair representation, and the equitable distribution of resources. But 6 decades on, that expectation has been replaced by disillusionment as ethnic divisions deepen and allegations of marginalization, unequal treatment, and oppression grow louder. In 2014, Nigerians were jubilant when a national conference produced a landmark report, the culmination of decades of struggle that sought to transform this country into a nation that's truly united in diversity. The aim was to enshrine the rights of the multitude of ethnic groups in a new constitution and to devolve resources and power from the center to the regions. But 10 years on, that much vaunted report continues to languish in the doldrums, and the leadership continues to ignore it. It's a striking failure in the midst of so much inequality and bitterness. But now there are growing calls for the government of President Tinubu to champion change and implement that 2014 National Conference report. But is anyone listening? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from Enugu by the constitutional lawyer, former governorship aspirant and former member of the Enugu State House of Assembly, Nwabueze Ugwu, whose NGO, the Coalition for Good Governance, is calling for the adoption of that 2014 confab report. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Tell us briefly why you want the Nigerian government to revisit and revamp that 2014 Constitutional Conference report. Why is it more acceptable than the current 1999 Nigerian Constitution?
First and foremost, Charles, if you take your mind back to 2014, when that conference was convoked, you will remember that 494 Nigerians of various walks of life were brought together to confer and they bring out that report, which later was now being referred to as a 2014 confab report. You will also agree that 494 persons are probably a community or a clan. There are many, there are much. And if you now look at the Constitution 1999, you will remember that it was the military that handed over that Constitution to us. That, of course, you know, there was a shadow legislature, the Armed Forces Ruling Council, but then the person that was in charge of the executive as well as in charge of the executive was the head of state, Abacha, at that time. Okay, well, it was Abdul Salami finally that brought that Constitution 19, that hammered it together. Now, this is an individual. At the worst, there was a committee that he formed, which committee you can be sure were not more than 30, 40 persons. But you now look at 494 human beings that represented every strata of the Nigerian system, every state, every local government, every shade of opinion, every governmental and non-governmental organization was fully represented, and they took into consideration everything that came to make up what is called Nigeria today. All our worries were brought into focus during that conference. And the conferees, at the end of the day, brought out what we now refer to as the 2014 confab report. So that report, to a great extent, answered the worries, the problems of the nation at that time. And it was acceptable to everybody. Everybody said, at the end of the day, we'll heave a sigh of relief and say we at least have a constitution that has been given to us by Nigerians themselves. If you remember the 1999 Constitution, look again at the preamble to that Constitution. It says that we, the Nigerians, but of course you know that there was no time Nigerians were ever even invited to make any form of representation, let alone to whether their representation was acceptable or accepted, or whether it was even taken into consideration. But the thing says that we, Nigerians, have given unto ourselves that constitution. Nothing could be more fallacious. Nothing could be more untrue. So, but at the end of the day, you can now see that the problems of this country have become multifarious and multifaceted. The problems of Nigeria has become gargantuan. It has continued to grow in leaps and bounds. It's as if there's no solution in sight. And at the end of the day, Nigerians have continued to clamor for a more acceptable constitution.
Okay,
They've continued to say that we no longer want the 1999 constitution because it does not solve our problems. Let us now have a constitution that we will give to ourselves, which will now solve, at least make a great effort to solve the problems of this country.
Okay, well,
and
thank you.
that's why we're now saying that.
Right, you've set out the case for a new constitution that emerges out of that 2014 National Conference report. How is that report likely to end the issues that really affect Nigerians negatively today, such as insecurity, ethnic antagonism, corruption, restructuring, credible elections, etc.?
The way it will solve these problems is that the government has refused to bring out the report for the people to see, but at least all of us followed the events that led up to the winding up of that conference. And we can also remember to a great extent the contents of the issues that conference attended to, and the report that they also brought out. And we can also remember that most of the issues we cry about today were taken care of by that report. Things like restructuring. That report said that there was the need to allow the constituent parts of this country to just like we had during the 1960 Order and Council Constitution, and especially the 1963 Republican Constitution, wherein constituent parts, the regions, under the 1960 we had the 3 regions, under the 1963 Republican Constitution we had 4 regions. The regions were allowed to mine their resources, make money anyhow they could do it, and then pay a royalty to the Federation. It is that percentage that is paid by the regions to the Federation that the Federation will now use to run itself. And of course, at that time, you had just few things that the federal government was taking care of. Today, under the 1999 Constitution, just like you had under the 79 Constitution, you have 68 items on the exclusive legislative list, which was established by Section 4 of the Constitution. In fact, specifically, Section 4, subsection 3, and Section 4, subsection 2. Now, these things cannot be acceptable. And if you even look at the Constitution very well, you will discover that Part 1 of the second schedule, which lists the exclusive list, and the Part 2 of the second schedule that lists the concurrent list, Section 4 still said that whatever law the National Assembly makes in respect of anything in the concurrent list will remain the law. If the State Assembly makes any law that will be inconsistent with the one made by the Federation, that of the Federation that of the state will be void to the extent of the inconsistency. The implication actually is that the Houses of Assembly are just mere appendages to the National Assembly. It's as if they are not existing because they have almost no job to do. The only job they can do is the one left by the National Assembly for them to do. So invariably they have no job.
I get the point you're making.
The truth of the matter.
Right. I get the point you're making, and I apologize for interrupting you, but we've got to sort of gallop ahead. Just to clarify for our international viewers who may not understand what restructuring is. It's the idea of each region of Nigeria having more autonomy, which would keep Nigeria united but significantly reduce power at the center. But let me ask you this, Barrister Ugwu, because is the problem in Nigeria about the laws in Nigeria, or is it about the politicians ruling or governing in accordance with the law? Because I think it was the Russian writer Leo Tolstoy who said that writing laws is easy, but governing is difficult.
Yes, I've continued to say, and I repeat it, I mean every word of it, that the problem we have in Nigeria is not a dearth of laws, but a dearth of implementation of the laws. We have laws to take care of everything that we need to do in life. They are there and they are complete, they are sufficient, they are credible, and they answer every problem that we have. But the problem we have is that we have refused to implement these things. The problem in Nigeria is that when laws are implemented, the people that implement these laws implement the laws in order to suit their whims and fancies, to suit their pocket, to suit their interest. They do not implement the laws in order to achieve the letters and intent of the law, to at least be able to say that this is what the drafters of the law wanted to do. That's what to do. Just like, if you remember, sometime in 1677, the British government enacted a statute called the Statute of Fraud of 1677. It was done because there was a lot of fraud there. But at the end of the day, after that law was enacted, that law that was enacted to stamp out fraud now became an instrument of fraud. So what the government did was that the government had to abrogate that law, because you know that ratio est legis anima. Mutata legis ratione mutato et lex. That any time a law is made because there is the reason to do it. But the moment the reason for making that law changes, you have no alternative than to also change the law. That's why the British government changed it. Now that the Constitution of Nigeria is not a solution to the problems of this country, the only alternative we have is to change the Constitution. And like you know, the Constitution can be amended through the instrumentality of the law as provided by the Constitution itself. Section 9, subsection 2 deals with amending any part of the Constitution except Section 8, Section 9, and Chapter 4 of the Constitution, which runs from Section 33 to Section 46. Now, Section 9, subsection 3 is more stringent because it also amends the Section 9 itself, amends Section 8 on boundary adjustment, adjustment of local government boundary, state boundary, and also amends Chapter 4 of the Constitution, which the Supreme Court said in Chief Gani Fawumi and the LPDC, Legal Practitioner Disciplinary Committee, that it is the most important part of the Constitution, which has the privilege of nullifying any other provision of the Constitution, or indeed any other law that is inconsistent with it. So what I am saying really is that there is the need to change the Nigerian 1999 Constitution because it has become a problem instead of being a solution.
Okay.
And remember,
well, you've made that point, Nwabueze. Again, I apologize. Yeah, you've made that point. We've got to keep moving. So you've set out the case for basically dropping that 1999 Constitution. What would be the process of translating that 2014 National Conference report that you advocate into a legal document?
First and foremost, you remember that 2014 Conference report cost Nigeria 10 billion naira at that time in 2014, which at that time was $61 million. And $61 million then, naira was 165 to a dollar. Today, naira is 1,430 to a dollar. So at $61 million, today would be 87 billion naira. So, and you know, looking at the Nigerian factor, corruption, a whole lot of things. If you now have to bring 494 persons to come and confer again, you will have to spend more than $100 billion, I can assure you that. Because 87 billion will no longer be 87 billion. There will be pardon, there will be corruption, which will take it to more than 100 billion. So that's why we do not have to throw away the 2014 confab report. We have to use it because we can afford to spend over 100 billion naira today on such a conference, looking at the paucity of funds in Nigeria, looking at the fact that our economy is in the doldrums and is in very bad financial stress.
That's not the point.
So the process
I
of
sorry
that
to interrupt you again. That's not the point. That's not the point I'm making. What I'm asking you.
Yes,
what I'm asking you is, I mean, we know the reasons why you want to adopt it, but I'm saying, what would be the process of translating that report into a legal document? We haven't got that much time, so I need you to kind of get to the point.
That's exactly what I'm getting to. I did say, I've already said how you can amend the Constitution. Remember, the Constitution is supreme and says you cannot govern the country or any part of it except in accordance with the Constitution of the 1999 Constitution. That's Section 1, subsection 2. Now, the only way the Constitution says you can amend the Constitution is by Section 9, subsection 2 and Section 9, subsection 3. So, but the most important is Section 9, subsection 3, which amends the totality of the Constitution, even Section 1, subsection 2. So now, the only way we can do it is by bringing that 2014 confab report, dust it, and bring out all the contents of it, set up a panel, mostly lawyers and few other persons, that will come together and translate the 2014 confab report into a workable legal document that will now become the Constitution. Because you have to translate it. It's not written in a legal language. It's not written in the form of a constitution. So you need to translate it to the form of a constitution. So that's why you need to empanel a committee to do so. If there, I agree that between the last 10 years, 2014 to 2024, there may have been some certain things that have changed in Nigeria. Certain aspects of that confab report may no longer be possible in this country today. So those few gray areas, you can bring them out, throw them open to the public, and Nigerians will make comments on it. You can also organize town hall meetings, and the Nigerians will make their comments about it. We'll come to a position that will be acceptable to everybody, and we'll now have a constitution, a working document, which will still be enacted the way every other law is enacted. You now remember, Section 9, subsection 3 tells you that two-thirds majority of the National Assembly will agree on whatever amendment you want to make. Then 4/5 majority of the 4/5 state houses of assembly of this country will also approve of it before it comes back to the National Assembly that will agree on a simple majority. It now goes to the president, and the president will now assent to it. But remember that there was a 2014 constitutional amendment that was the highest that has taken place since 1999, which, if the Goodluck Jonathan had signed it into law, by now we wouldn't have needed the assent of Mr. President to enact any law. The moment the National Assembly enacts the law, and after 30 days, the President does not assent to it, if it gets back to the National Assembly, the National Assembly enacts it with a simple majority, and it becomes law. That's why those amendments to the Electoral Act that took place in 2018 place, where the head of state, the president at that time, Buhari, refused to assent to that amendment to Electoral Act 4 times, assuming Goodluck Jonathan had signed the 2014 constitutional amendment into law, that the assent of Buhari would not have been needed after the first amendment was done. 30 days after it was sent to him, if he does not assent to it, he returns back to the National Assembly, and that assembly would have passed it into law with a simple majority. That's why we say that each person in any position where he finds himself, what he does is very important, and they can make or mar this country.
Okay. Well, here you are, Barrister Ugwu, making these points, which to many people will come across as salient points. But is anyone listening? I mean, most importantly, the National Assembly, the Tinubu government and the ruling APC party?
You see, that's why one man, Lance Morrow, who used to write for American Time magazine, a man I regard as one of the best writers the world has had, he once said that the issue is not whether things are being said. The issue is whether people are listening and whether there are ears and whether those people hear, whether those people understand what they hear. I believe that members of the National Assembly are listening. I also believe that they know that that is the best thing that can happen to this country. Nigeria is in serious financial difficulty. In 2014, when this confab took place, Nigerian external reserve was $40 billion. Today, Nigerian external reserve is $24 billion. In that 2014, Nigeria's indebtedness was 12 trillion naira. Today, Nigeria's indebtedness is 107 trillion naira. For heaven's sake, this country needs serious economic emergency, and a state of emergency needs to be declared. That's why we need to do everything, because if we restructure, you call it restructuring, call it power devolution, but that will be true federalism. We need true federalism in this country so that this country can move forward. If we had left the First Republic as it was, untampered with, remember that Nigerian economy, the economy of Eastern Nigeria, was one of the fastest growing economies in the world. At that time, it was growing faster than Dubai economy. If you look at the pictures taken in 1970 of Dubai and the one taken of Lagos, 1970, you'll understand that where Nigeria would have been by now, Nigeria would have been far more developed than Dubai. You see, so the problem we have always had is that of leadership. And of course, that of followership as well. Because the followers need to mark the leaders so that the dealers can sit up. Right. The number one problem has not remained with the leaders, but also with the followers who have refused to insist that the leaders must do the proper thing. Well, after they cast their vote, they just fold their arms and go and sit down, and the leaders will be doing what they want.
Well,
You need to sit them up and say, enough is enough.
That's a good point. So what's your next move? I mean, where do things go from here in terms of your campaign?
My next move is that I will want to continue to drum it into the ears of every Nigerian, not just that of the members of the National Assembly, but I'm sure that in their heart of hearts, I've discussed with too many members of the National Assembly, and they agree that the best thing we should do is to set aside the 1999 Constitution and bring a brand new Constitution which will take care of all the problems we have in Nigeria. They all seem to agree that the exclusive legislative list of the Federation should not exceed more than 6 or 7 items. Let me tell you, Charles, if you look at the Constitution, my recommendation is that there should be 2 exclusive legislative lists. One should be for the Federation, exclusive legislative list A, and then exclusive legislative list B for the constituent parts of this country, whether we decide that it should be states or we should not get back to regions, whatever it is. But they should have the bulk. The exclusive list for the Federation should not exceed 6, 7 items. That of the states should take the rest. Today we have 68 items in the exclusive list for the Federation, and in fact nothing for the states, because like I've said, even the concurrent list still belongs to the Federation. So if you will do this, you will see that competition will come back. That competition that was prevalent in 1960 will return to Nigeria, and the constituent parts of this country will develop at a very fast pace. And when they begin this kind of development, you will see that in less than no time, this country, I wouldn't say that Nigeria will become an El Dorado. I will also not say that gold will begin to flow in Nigeria. But of course, you remember that land of Canaan may probably be translated to this country.
Well, I think you've made some very good points there, and we appreciate your sharing them with us. Nwabueze Ugwu is a constitutional lawyer, former governorship aspirant, and former member of the Enugu State House of Assembly. And he runs an NGO, the Coalition for Good Governance, that's calling for the adoption of the 2014 Confab report. Thank you very much indeed.